3.2D, add and subtract mixed numbers. So we are going to now switch to mixed numbers instead of just fractions, but some of the same rules apply. They have to have a common denominator as you're combining them, and it looks like you'll have a mixture today. Some of them will already have a common denominator and some of them will not. In the main heading it says to add or subtract fractions, rename using the least common denominator if necessary. Then add or subtract the whole numbers and simplify if necessary. So just looking at the examples that they have there, 6 1/10 and 2 3/10. If I look at that, just be aware that they line those up vertically so that the fractional part is lined up, and they go ahead and combine the fractional part. So 1/10 and 3/10 was 4/10. They line up the whole part, so 6 plus 2 is 8. And then they simply just have to check 8 4/10, is that a simplified answer? And 4/10 is not. All right, so they simplify 8 4/10 as 8 2/5. Next, if you have a subtraction, 8 2/3 minus 6 1/2. Well, this one, as they line it up, they see that it is not common denominator. So you've got to find a common denominator of 3 and 2. So they go ahead and rewrite both those fractions with a denominator of 6. Then they combine them. I think they kind of skipped some things. Did you see that? They just assume that you know some of these things. So we better go over, as you rewrite them, 2/3 becomes 4/6. 6 1/2 is 6 3/6. But does it become, oh, it's subtraction. Okay, so they're subtracting 4/6 minus 3/6. It is 1/6. And 8 minus 6 is 2. Okay, it is right, 2 1/6. I thought they skipped a step in there, but they did not. All right, we're going to go on and look at the examples that you guys wrote down, or the exercises, and have some of you help me do these. Number 1, 1 3/5 and 4 1/5. So it looks like for all of these, we want you to write the problems vertically. So I've got 1 3/5 plus 4 1/5. Would anybody like to try to help do this one? Emily, let's add up the fractional part first. 3/5 plus 1/5. 4/5. And then the whole part? That'd be 5. Is 5 4/5 a good final answer? Yes. So 5 4/5 is done. All right, now let's do number 3 next. I'm going to move it down here. It is 3 2/3 plus 2 1/2. That one doesn't have a common denominator, does it, Caden?
No, it does
No,
not.
it does not. So what would be the common denominator of 3 and 2?
It would be 6.
It's 6. Now what I do with this, I'm not going to rewrite the 3 and 2. I'm just going to come over here and draw an arrow and put 6. Now 3 times what is 6, Caden?
3 times 2 equals 6.
3 times 2. So 2 times 2 would be,
2 times 2 would be 4.
so this is a 4/6. Down here at the bottom, 2 times what is 6?
3
So 1 times 3
is 3.
is 3. Okay, so I'm going to now kind of X this out in the middle. And 4/6 plus 3/6, Caden, is what?
7, 6.
7/6. And then 3 plus 2,
That's 5.
5. Now, Caden, is 5 and 7/6 a good final answer?
No, because 7/6 is an improper fraction.
7/6 is improper fraction. So we've got to fix that. But keep in mind, we still have 5, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so 7/6, how do you change that to a mixed number?
You take 7 divided by 6.
7 divided by 6. How many full times does 6 go into 7?
1.
1. And what's left over?
1.
So 7/6 is really how much?
7/6 is really 1 and 1/6.
1 and 1/6, but we already had a 5, so if we put that together, how much is my final answer?
Your final answer would be 6 and 1/6.
6 and 1/6 would be my final answer. So that could happen. If your fractional part is improper, then you're probably going to have to add some whole part to the whole part you have of the main mixed number, right? So the 7/6 has got some left over. So you have to move that 1 up to the 5. Questions about that? Do you remember doing that from last year?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they were saying last period that they remembered that too. All right, any questions about that? Now, the next one looks very interesting. 8 minus 6 and 7/8. Dylan, if I write this like this, vertically, and I have 8 minus 6 and 7/8, what in the world am I going to do about that 7/8? I don't have anything to take it from.
Drop it down.
Drop it down. You can't just drop it down because I think that's going to make the answer too big if I just drop it down. I've got to have something to take it from. So what could I put in that spot? Any idea?
0.
If I put a 0 there, I've got to be able to subtract 7/8 from 0, and I can't do that. But let's think about this. Anytime you're trying to subtract like a regular number, and you might have to borrow. Does that sound familiar? Anytime you try to subtract a regular number and it's too much, you're taking away too much from them what you have above it, don't you have to borrow? So let's borrow 1 from this 8 and make it a 7. The question is, what do we put in the fractional spot? That 1 that we borrowed, it could be different for every problem. Now let me kind of go over here to this. Anytime you borrow a 1, it could be maybe 5/5. Or if you borrow a 1, it could be 12/12. Or if you borrow a 1, it could be 3/3. But Dylan, this time my 1 has to be what?
7.
Does it have to be 7?
No.
Where are you getting 7?
Oh.
We borrowed 1 whole.
1 over 1.
I want to take 7/8 from it. So in order to get 7/8 to be able to subtract from it, what has to be true about my denominator?
It has to 8 over 8.
It has to be 8 over 8. So that 1 that we borrowed this time became 8 over 8. Now, Dylan, 8/8 minus 7/8, what is that?
1 over 8.
1 over 8. And 7 minus 6 is
1.
1. So if you have to borrow, your 1 could be any number over itself. And what determines it is that denominator. That's the one that you borrow. Okay, let's look at the ones over here on the right because I want to make sure that we've got this down. Is anybody still writing that problem in red? Okay. Let's look at number 4. So 5 3/4 minus 3 1/6. So it looks like this one's going to need to be rewritten. Who would like to try that hasn't already done a problem? 5 3/4 minus 3 1/6. Liam, what's my denominator going to be?
The denominator is going to be 24.
Well, let's try for the least common denominator. So go to 6. It's the biggest one. Does 4 go into 6 evenly?
No.
No. So then take 6 times 2.
12.
Does 4 go into 12 evenly?
Oh, yeah.
So that's a lot better to go smaller. Remember, you want to try to keep it the smallest one you can. So we're going to go 12 for both of those. Now, Liam, 6 times what is 12?
2.
2. So because I take 6 times 2, I'm going to go 1 times 2. So what's that numerator going to be?
It's gonna be
2. All right, Liam, 4 times what is 12?
3.
3. So 3 times 3,
9.
9. Okay, now what I do, when I do it like this, I mark this middle out. So now I've got 5 and 9/12 and 3 and 2/12. So Leanne, 9/12 minus 2/12,
Would be, it would be 7/12.
7/12.
2 and 7.
And then, and what was it?
2 and 7.
Yep, 2 and 7/12. So is that a good final answer?
Yes.
Yes, it is. All right, any questions about that?